Esmeralda had 300,000 followers. She was super active on Instagram.
She was very, very active on Instagram. There's a lot of pictures of her in designer clothes, designer shoes, the Rolex watch, the jewelry.
5 days after celebrating her 24th birthday with family, she stepped out in lingerie at night and vanished. Afterward, the police tracked her movements using security footage but couldn't figure out where she went. Over a month later, an anonymous tip gave them a big break. It turned out she had been murdered, and her body was found sealed in a wooden box with cement.
If you want ordinary, look elsewhere. Welcome to TC Channel, where other channels fall short, unique mysteries solved step by step.
On May 31st, 2019, at 5:30 p.m. Esmeralda's brother Juan went to check on her. When he got there, he found the door cracked open, and the place was a mess. Esmeralda's purse and wallet were still inside, but she was nowhere to be found. Juan immediately felt something was off, so he reached out to family and friends, but no one knew where she was. He quickly called the police. The cops showed up shortly after, and while the scene was a little chaotic, they were lucky the house had security cameras. They checked the footage and saw that Esmeralda hadn't been in any danger at home, but she definitely wasn't acting like herself. For the past 2 days, she'd been talking to the doorbell, saying things like,
"Why are you mad at me?" I said, "Babe, I'm really freaked out because I can feel my teeth, they're all loose."
Since Esmeralda had left without her car, phone or any cash, the police figured she couldn't have gone far. So they started looking around the neighborhood. They quickly found their first clue. This footage, recorded at 2:30 a.m. on May 31st, was from just outside her house. In the video, Esmeralda is seen walking down the street, stopping near a neighbor's house, then walking up to the door. She takes out a key, like she's about to unlock it, as if she thinks it's her house. Since Esmeralda was only wearing lingerie, which was pretty revealing, the neighbor thought she might be a prostitute or troublemaker, so they didn't ask any questions, just told her to leave.
Oh, I do?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
After leaving the neighbor's house, Esmeralda wobbled back onto the street and quickly disappeared from sight. From this footage, the police came to 2 important conclusions. First, Esmeralda didn't seem to be trying to avoid going home, but her mental state was clearly off, and it looked like she had forgotten where her house was. Juan told the police that Esmeralda was born on May 26, 1995, and they were a Mexican-American family raised in Las Vegas. She was the second child and had a younger brother. Esmeralda was sharp and knew how to make the most of opportunities. She had already accomplished a lot at a young age. She graduated from the University of Nevada. With degrees in literature and communications, she was also a popular influencer with 300,000 followers and worked as a model, making hundreds of dollars per hour. On top of that, she invested in real estate, owning several properties in Las Vegas. In her brother Juan's eyes, Esmeralda, at just 24, was thriving in every way. But there was one regret. At 23, she developed a serious mental illness and had to take a lot of medication to manage it. Juan said,
"When Esmeralda was on her medications, she lived a normal life, and she was no different than the child I grew up knowing. If Esmeralda stopped taking her medications, she may experience challenges with her perception of reality."
When she was unwell, Esmeralda would have severe mood swings and experience hallucinations and delusions, with her thinking and memory also affected at her worst. She even had suicidal thoughts. That's why Juan was always worried about her, especially after her breakup with her boyfriend Matthew of 5 years. Her new boyfriend Luis didn't have the patience to care for her, so Juan would visit her almost every week to make sure she took her medication to keep things from getting worse. 2 days ago, Luis told Juan that Esmeralda had been having a tough time mentally, and to keep her from wandering, he took her phone and car keys. But despite all of Juan's efforts, the tragedy still happened. Police checked the surveillance footage and calculated that Esmeralda had been missing for over 15 hours. Her not returning home for so long suggested she might be in danger. She didn't seem to have taken anything with her. There was no way she'd just been wandering around the streets. Normally, the next step would be to search the surrounding areas more intensively, but for some reason, they didn't do that. Instead, they spent a lot of time investigating Esmeralda's boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, and online friends. Meanwhile, Esmeralda's family mobilized the community to help search for her. They eventually brought some important clues to the police in July 2019, more than a month after the incident. The police received a tip from a local car dealership. The dealership staff said Esmeralda had come in on the afternoon of May 30th to buy a car key. At the time, she seemed to be in a bad mental state and was accompanied by an unfamiliar man. They stayed for about half an hour before leaving together. The police quickly identified the man from the security footage. He was Esmeralda's neighbor. Brantin Brandt had already known about Esmeralda's disappearance and had even been interviewed by the media, but when the police approached him, he hadn't told anyone anything about it. Even though Brandt's actions seemed suspicious, it appeared he might have been hiding something. The police found no evidence. In the end, they cleared him of any involvement. After that, the investigation stalled. Most of the leads relied on Juan's frequent media interviews to keep the case in the public eye. Thanks to Juan's persistence, the police finally caught a break 2 months after the incident. The police received an anonymous tip. It claimed that Chris and his roommate Sandra had murdered a young woman and dumped her body in the desert. At first, the police didn't connect this tip to the case. The tipster hadn't given a name or a specific timeline, but after some investigation, the police found that Chris lived near Esmeralda's home. And after the incident, the missed work for a week, this raised some suspicions. Soon after, another anonymous source came forward. This tipster directly told the police that the victim was Esmeralda. They also said Chris and Sandra had used cleaning chemicals to kill her, then sealed her body in cement. They disposed of the body in the desert. The tipster's information was quickly verified. The police obtained Chris's car rental contract security footage, showing him buying cement and wood, and cell phone records, showing his location in the desert. However, these pieces of evidence weren't enough to arrest Chris. It also didn't strongly connect Sandra to the crime. So the police knew they had to find Esmeralda's body to bring the two to justice. Finding the body was going to be tough, especially in such a vast desert. With Chris's vague phone location, they had no way of finding it. So the police came up with a plan. It seemed a bit off and more complicated than needed, but it turned out to be necessary for later developments. At first, the police didn't question Chris or Sandra. They saved that for later, since they didn't have solid evidence to go on. Without proof, it'd be hard to get a confession. The police found out that Chris had a girlfriend, Lisa, who had been arrested after the incident for illegal items. They thought Lisa might know something because Chris wasn't exactly careful. The fact that the tipster knew so many details meant Chris likely shared something with someone. The police figured it was Lisa, so they thought she could lead them to the body, but they didn't realize how close Chris and Lisa were. Lisa didn't cooperate, and from jail, she even called crystalling him to run. But that's another story. At first, the police didn't know this was happening, since they couldn't get any useful information from Lisa. The police had to go straight to the suspects. The first person they questioned was Sandra. By that point, she had already moved to Wisconsin, staying with a friend. The police thought Sandra was a good place to start, since her involvement seemed minor, and she might be more willing to talk. But things didn't go as planned. Sandra denied the tipster's claims and ended the interview quickly. So the police turned to Crispy. Then Chris was ready. He answered every question confidently, and his place was spotless. The police didn't find anything useful, and there was no evidence at his home. First, the police strategy wasn't very effective, but they quickly took action. They offered Sandra a deal she couldn't resist. They promised a reduced sentence and even delayed her arrest. She could remain free even after admitting her involvement. In the end, Sandra accepted the offer and confessed on October 8, 2019, nearly 2 months after the incident. The police located a large, sealed container in the desert using the coordinates Sandra provided. Inside the container was a body because of the condition. The coroner couldn't pinpoint the exact cause of death. However, the evidence suggested suffocation. This gave the police the evidence they needed, but Chris was still missing. That's when they discovered Lisa had been in contact with him from the detention center. Through their monitoring, the police learned that Chris had traveled to Belize and was planning a return. The reason? Lisa was soon to be released. Chris was hoping to reunite with her. While neither Chris nor Lisa were model citizens, they shared a strong bond. One was confined, but still thinking of the other. The other was away, but still cared for the one locked up. This connection played a key role in breaking the case. On October 11, 2019, the police were able to track Chris down just as he was coming back. The police didn't release much information, and some of their actions raised questions. First off, Chris never admitted to the crime. She didn't explain what really happened, but the police still made a deal with her, even though they could have convicted her without it. Another person was also involved in the case. She indirectly contributed to Esmeralda's death. But the police never revealed her identity, nor did they press charges against her. There are still many unclear parts of the case. First, listen to voice message found on Chris's phone. It shows how she met Esmeralda.
Where's your name? Esmeralda.
Esmeralda? I pull up and she's sitting outside. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, can I get in the car? I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Right now, get in the car.
Where are you walking from?
She's up.
Esmeralda was walking around when Chris's friend brought her to Chris's place, according to Chris's roommate Sandra. First, they thought Esmeralda was working, so they interacted with her. During this time, Chris introduced Esmeralda to some substances. Chris wanted some excitement and pushed Esmeralda to try them. What happened next, Sandra says she's unsure. She didn't say when Chris's friend left, but it's clear that after taking the substances, Esmeralda became upset. She screamed that she wanted to leave. Fearing Esmeralda might report her, Chris locked her in a room. Sandra tried to convince Chris to let her go, but didn't succeed. After the conflict, Esmeralda kept shouting. She was very agitated. After being kicked, Chris ran downstairs in anger. She grabbed rope, a syringe, and cleaning supplies. Then, with Sandra's help, Chris used these items to take her life. Sandra's version of events is unclear. She didn't explain what Esmeralda knew or why she helped. But it turns out Chris had a criminal record for dealing with controlled substances. She likely feared Esmeralda might report her, and that could be why she acted this way. As for Sandra, the reason she got involved isn't clear, but it's unlikely she was threatened. They had 8 full days from the crime to hide the evidence. Sandra had plenty of chances to call the police or escape, but didn't. So it seems like Sandra and Chris had a deeper connection. They may not have just been roommates. They could have been more than that. On May 23, 2023, 4 years after the crime, the trial finally took place. Lisa was sentenced to 5 years for helping Chris escape. Sandra got 20 years. She could be eligible for parole after 8 years. Chris was sentenced to 10 to 25 years for second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. She'll serve at least 10 years up to 25, and she'll be eligible for parole. Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and follow for more updates. Thanks for your support.